And this means that one of the things that we strive for is to have a mix of different voices, opinions, and sources of news. So that plurality is a really important aim that we work towards always. And it also means protecting children and all of us from harmful content. So when we talk about having a thriving, diverse, creative, safe, and trusted media landscape, that's exactly what we mean. We have obviously began life as a regulator in 1988. The 1988 Broadcasting Act established the IRTC to license and regulate broadcasting services, primarily radio at that stage, particularly because this would have been prior to TG Cahir and TV3. So it would have really just been RTE television at the time. And then the Broadcasting Act 2001 established the BCI, the Broadcasting Commission of Ireland, and that act continues to regulate broadcasting services and also content provision contracts, for example, Setanta Sport. And it also implements broadcasting codes and deals with complaints via the BCC, and which is the complaints mechanism. And the Broadcasting Act of 2009 then established the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland, which had a different structure to the BCI, but similar in terms of remit. So basically, most of what we do, even currently as Coimisiún Meán, is legislated under the Broadcasting Act 2009. So that sets out what our obligations are in terms of regulation and support for the sector. And then more recently, we've had the Online Safety and Media Regulation Act, the OSMR, which has extended the remit for media regulation in Ireland. So basically, the reason that BAI evolved into Coimisiún Meán was largely because of the Media Regulation Act, because that is a more expansive remit. It obviously includes online media, digital media, streaming services, etc., whereas we would have originally been set up just for linear broadcasters. And then Coimisiún Meán was established on the 15th of March 2023 as the new organisation having responsibility for the regulation and promotion of the media sector, both online and linear. And so under the OSMR, the Online Safety and Media Regulation Act, the remit of the regulator was extended to facilitate the establishment of a regulatory framework for online safety that covers video on demand services and video sharing platform services. So that would be the likes of video sharing platform services, would be most of your social media platforms, to be honest. Most of them have the capacity to share videos, and video on demand services would be the likes of obviously YouTube, etc. We continue to regulate broadcasting services such as radio and television, and we have a broader media development role than our predecessor. So, for example, something I'll be touching on would be that we will have new funding streams for journalism, so court reporting and local democracy. Also, we're looking at setting up a funding scheme for sports coverage. So those are all things that we wouldn't have done previously. And our structure then currently is led by an executive chair and 4 commissioners as follows. We have an online safety commissioner, a digital services commissioner, a broadcasting and video on demand commissioner, a media development commissioner, and circa 170 staff, could be closer to 180 actually, compared to 40 staff in the BAI. So basically, when we were BAI, we were capped at a staff of 40, but we're currently in the process of expanding and will be continuing to expand for the end of this year and into next year. And if anybody would like to find out more about the different work areas that we have, who our commissioners are, etc., all of that is on our website, cnam.ie. And so currently we're laying the foundations for Ireland's online safety framework. So this will make digital services accountable for how they protect people, especially children, from harm online. And it involves 3 pieces of legislation: the Online Safety and Media Regulation Act 2022, which is the basis for the Online Safety Code. We intend to adopt and apply the code to video sharing platform services based in Ireland shortly, hopefully in the next month or 2. Also the EU Digital Services Act, and also the EU Terrorist Content Online Regulation. So what all of that means in real terms is that, you know, when you look at campaigns around hate speech, anti-bullying, etc. online, that's all stemming from those pieces of legislation and all under our remit. So all of the social media platforms would be regulated by us, and would be bound by those pieces of legislation. And so we also, in terms of what we do in terms of broadcasting and video on demand, we license radio and television stations, including RT, TG Cahir, the Houses of the Oireachtas, etc. And obviously, as Learning Waves and Teresa will be very aware, there is relicensing of some of the radio stations underway at the moment. So we would obviously license the commercial broadcasters, but also the public service broadcasters and the community broadcasters. We regulate TV and radio services and audiovisual and video on demand services established in Ireland. We have overall responsibility for the regulation of Irish public service broadcasters. We devise and implement codes and rules for programme content on Irish broadcasting services. So that is that covers a lot of things. So that's, you know, how much what Irish language obligations a broadcaster would have, or broadcasters would have, what is suitable for pre-watershed, post-watershed. Like, there's a lot in that. We handle complaints from viewers and listeners concerning content broadcast by licensed and public service broadcasters and made available on video on demand services. And we implement a range of plurality activities, including providing advice for the minister in respect of media mergers. For example, when one station seeks to buy another station. Apologies, I've just spotted a few typos there, but we will amend those before we circulate these. But yes, essentially, we would help to ensure plurality of the sector. So there's a diversity of voices. So basically, we don't have a situation where there is just one monopoly. There's one individual or corporation that controls the majority of the Irish media landscape. That's what we want to make sure, that there is always diverse voices, that there is that mix of community, commercial and public sector, that there is a mix of programming and voices that reflects different demographics, different interests, different points of view. So that is really important. A really important function that we carry out is to promote that. And then the types of services that we license: television program service, obviously, content provision service. So this would be a kind of specialized. So for example, a sports service, or specialized, you know, like broadcasting, like maybe horse racing or Formula One, something like that. Community television content, and commercial sound broadcasting services. So that would be the commercial IBI radio stations, the community radio stations, temporary sound broadcasting. So that would be the likes of Christmas FM, for example, would apply to us for a temporary license every year. Institutional sound broadcasting services, that would be hospital radio stations, for example. We would license all of those. So then a very important function also is the complaints process. Any viewer or listener has the right to complain about any aspect of broadcast content, whether it is a programme or an advertisement. All complaints must be handled by the broadcaster in the first instance. So it's important you familiarise yourself with the complaints policy of your respective radio stations. So we would often have, I don't work in the complaints team, but Coimisiún Meán would often receive complaints from members of the public about something that they were unhappy with on radio or television. And the first question that's asked is always, have you contacted the broadcaster? So their first protocol is the broadcaster, and they would also need to identify, and we can assist them in doing this, but it would need to be established what code or rule was breached, or what code or rule the viewer or the listener felt was breached. If a resolution cannot be sought between the complainant and the broadcaster, the complaint may then be escalated to An Coimisiún. So if they feel that they don't get satisfaction or a response from the broadcaster, it's then escalated to ourselves. The current process is under review and we're engaging with legal advice, which will increase An Coimisiún's screening and investigation process. And An Coimisiún may impose stronger responses to broadcasters on online platforms in the future. Yet, because we are in a situation where, as you know, a lot of the tech companies happen to have their European headquarters in Ireland. So that means that the European legislation in respect of online safety is administered from Ireland. So that's obviously quite a new development. So the complaints, particularly for online safety, that process is quite new. So that is under review. And as that's being reviewed, you know, the linear complaints process will be being reviewed as well. And in terms of media development, which is where I have primarily worked since I joined BAI and Coimisiún and Meán, we undertake work to support Ireland's media sector in a number of ways, sound and vision, for television and radio. So the scheme provides funding in support of high quality programmes on Irish culture, health, heritage and experience, and programmes to improve adult literacy. Some of the projects you might be aware of would be Ours to Protect, which has been syndicated across multiple IBI stations. Films like An Coimisiún and Kneecap, those films actually would also have come through the Cine Cahir development scheme, which is supported by Screen Ireland, Coimisiún Meán and TG Cahir. Our sponsorship scheme sponsors media related events and activities that align with and raise awareness of our work and recognise the talent and support the development of the wider media sector. So the sponsorship scheme, Teresa will be very familiar with it. You know, we would through sponsorship and through sectoral learning and development, we would support initiatives like this, like the Learning Waves graduate programme. We would support festivals like the Galway Film Blah. So really anything that potentially boosts the profile of Irish media, gives people opportunities for training, upskilling, networking, that strengthens the sector, basically can apply to us via our sponsorship scheme or our sectoral learning and development scheme, depending on the nature of the project. And the archiving scheme supports the preservation of Ireland's broadcast heritage. We've actually had some really interesting projects through that. Like most of us are familiar with the iconic Guinness ads, for example. Those have been preserved and digitized. You know, but there's a lot universities and a lot of different bodies have archived and digitized their material through this scheme, which is great. Also, the sound and vision projects that we fund are all preserved for posterity in the IFI archive. And also we have the journalism schemes that I mentioned earlier coming on stream. So that's the court reporting and the local democracy schemes, and they're off the back of a recommendation from the Future of Media Commission report. A lot of our current work plan actually is based off recommendations from the Future of Media Commission. It's something you will see referenced on our website. It's something that's maybe no harm for you to be aware of. The first round of the journalism scheme just closed and received 131 applications, which is a great response for the first iteration of the schemes, which is great. And then in terms of Sound and Vision 4, the most recent funding round results were published in September 2024. There was a funding award of 10.1 million. 175 applications were received with 91 projects awarded funding. So the breakdown there was 56 radio projects and 35 TV projects. 30% of the funded projects supported Irish language and bilingual programming, and there is always a minimum of 25% of Sound and Vision funding ring-fenced for Irish language or bilingual programming. In terms of the radio projects funded, there is always a mix of commercial, community and public service broadcasters. So it is competitive, but we have been delighted to be able to support some pretty significant projects with IBI in the last few years, and it's great to see those resources being pooled for projects like Ours to Protect and Clár sa Chóir, etc. And then in terms of the sponsorship scheme, I have touched on that kind of a little bit already. But we sponsor and support events and activities that align with our work programme, support the development of the media sector, and generally raise awareness of the role and work of An Coimisiún. And that exists from the time of the BCI and the BAI. And anybody that's awarded funding through any of these programs enters into a contract with us, with everything that goes with that. There's a lot of administration that goes with receiving public funding, but it is something, if you are in that position, there's webinars and we talk you through that process, but it's just something to be aware of. Currently for sponsorship, there is a €300,000 budget allocated in 2024 to a range of organisations working in the media. And obviously when you receive these slides, you'll see there's a link to the press release there. And sectoral development, similarly, I've kind of touched on this already, but it supports industry networks and representative organisations to provide training and development. It's aligned with the OSMR Act, which notes that will promote training on initiatives and activities and cooperate with training bodies. And again, a similar contracting process, and has a budget of €550,000 for the upcoming scheme. And that's open to applicants from the commercial and community media, industry-specific producers, animators and journalists, advocacy organisations and groups promoting the Irish language. And that is due to be reviewed, actually, that funding scheme. All of these schemes are reviewed at regular intervals. And when that happens, we do look for feedback from applicants and from the sector. So it may well be the case that in coming years, we will be coming to you looking for your input into these schemes. So again, it's always good to be aware of them, maybe have a look through what the criteria are and kind of be thinking about where the opportunities might be for yourselves in the coming years. And then just generally across media development, we have media literacy initiatives to help people critically understand and interact with media and make informed choices about what they see, hear and share. And we're a key funder and facilitator of Media Literacy Ireland. We also have sustainability initiatives and are a funder of Sustainable Media Ireland. And the Albert Carbon Calculator project is also something that we are working on and supporting to establish a permanent certification process to measure and improve the environmental impact of content production in Ireland. Obviously, this is something that is maybe a bit more involved in the audiovisual sector, but it's still just good to be aware of, even in terms of, in radio, there can be opportunities to do things remotely versus in person, and it's always good to be aware of that aspect, that sustainability aspect of projects. And also our JEDI, gender equality, diversity and inclusion initiatives. Again, to help ensure media is diverse, accessible, inclusive and fully representative of society. And in July, we published our most recent gender equality, diversity and inclusion strategy, which is linked there also. And more media development, nearly there, but we're also carrying out a review of Irish language media, again, based on a recommendation of the Future Media Commission, and this will examine how Irish language media represents various aspects of Irish life. We're also looking at the provision of Nuacht, examining it and making recommendations on the role of Nuacht within RT and TG Cahir and the relationship between the two public service broadcasters. I'm actually involved in this project myself, the All Ireland Economy, preparing a research proposal on developing the all-island media economy and maximising collaboration between public service media providers and PSCPs on the all-island basis. And a strategic plan for sports broadcasting. So there's a lot of development happening. Most of it off the back either of the Future Media Commission recommendations and the OSMR and online safety bills.